Freddie Mercury was born in Zanzibar, raised in India, and forced to flee to England as a refugee at 17. He arrived with nothing, and the name the world would come to know, Freddie Mercury, wasn't even his real name. Almost nobody knew that. He made sure of it. Stonetown, Zanzibar. September 5th, 1946. A small island off the eastern coast of Africa, where Arab merchants, African traders, Indian settlers, and British colonists had lived side by side for centuries. Into this world, Bomi and Farrokh Bulsara welcomed their first son. They named him Farrokh, a Persian name meaning happy, auspicious, of good fortune. The Bulsaras were Parsi, descendants of Zoroastrians who had fled Persia centuries earlier and settled in India. They were a small, proud community that had carried their ancient faith across continents. In Zanzibar, Bomi worked as a cashier for the British colonial government. They were comfortable, settled, respected. The life they had built in Stonetown felt permanent. It was not. When Farrokh was 8 years old, his parents made a decision that was common among Parsi families with ambitions for their children. They sent him to boarding school in India. St. Peter's School in Panchgani, a hill station near Pune, took boys from across the British colonial world. The curriculum was English, the culture was English, and the children navigated it as best they could. It was here that Farrokh Bulsara disappeared for the first time. His classmates could not pronounce Farrokh. The sounds didn't come naturally in English mouths. They started calling him Freddie. By all accounts, he never corrected them. By the time he left St. Peter's, Farrokh had become Freddie to everyone who knew him, not by choice, but by convenience. He simply kept it. On the 12th of January, 1964, the world that the Bulsara family had built in Zanzibar ended in a single night. The Zanzibar Revolution, a violent uprising that overthrew the Arab Sultanate, swept through Stonetown with speed and brutality. Thousands were killed in the days that followed. The Arab and South Asian communities, including the Parsi families who had lived there for generations, were suddenly in danger. Bomi Bulsara gathered his family, his wife Farrokh, now 17, and his younger sister Kashmira, and they left. They left behind their home, their belongings, their community, everything that had defined their lives. They joined a wave of refugees and made their way to England, to a country that was cold and gray and entirely unfamiliar, to start again with almost nothing. The Bulsara family settled in Feltham, Middlesex, a quiet, unremarkable suburb on the western edge of London. For Farrokh, the contrast was almost impossible to process. He had spent his childhood between the warmth of Zanzibar and the structured world of boarding school in India. Now he was in a gray English suburb, in a small house, in a country where nobody knew his name or his family or his history. He enrolled briefly at Isleworth Polytechnic to complete his schooling. He was 17, he was a refugee, and he was in possession of two things that would define the next decade of his life: a talent he hadn't yet fully understood, and a name that wasn't quite his own. In the mid-1960s, Freddie Bulsara, still going by Freddie, was accepted to Ealing College of Art in West London, where he studied graphic art and design. It was not a music school, but in the London of the late 1960s, art school and music were the same conversation. The students who passed through those buildings were the ones who would define British rock for the next 2 decades. Freddie sold second-hand clothes at Kensington Market to survive. He moved between flats, between band projects that never quite worked, between a life he was building piece by piece in a city that had no reason to care about him. He had talent. He had ambition. He had a name, Freddie, that someone else had given him. He was still missing the last piece. Around 1970, Farrokh Bulsara made a decision. He had been playing with musicians, watching bands, absorbing everything the London music scene had to offer. He knew what he wanted to be. And he knew that Freddie Bulsara, the name of a Parsi accountant's son from Zanzibar, was not the name he was going to carry onto a stage. He chose Mercury, the messenger of the gods in Roman mythology. Speed, communication, movement between worlds. It was a name that suggested transformation. A figure who crossed boundaries, who carried messages between realms, whether he chose it for its mythology, or for its sound, or for both. The effect was the same. Farrokh Bulsara, the refugee boy from Stone Town, stepped aside. Freddie Mercury stepped forward. Queen became official in 1971. Freddie Mercury, the name, the persona, the complete invention, arrived with it. He had met Brian May and Roger Taylor through a band called Smile, and when their vocalist left, Freddie took the position with a confidence that nobody in the room had seen before. He rewrote the band's direction, designed their logo himself, 4 astrological signs representing each member, and began performing with an intensity that made clear he had been waiting for this stage his entire life. The refugee from Zanzibar, who had been given a nickname by schoolboys in India, had finally fully become someone else, someone he had designed, someone the world was not yet ready for. There is something worth pausing on in the distance between Farrokh and Freddie Mercury. Farrokh Bulsara had no control over where he was born, what his name sounded like in other people's mouths, or the revolution that drove his family from their home. He was moved across continents by forces larger than himself. Freddie Mercury was different. Freddie Mercury was something he built deliberately, carefully, with total intent. The name was chosen. The persona was constructed. The stage was claimed. And in the years that followed, he rarely spoke about Farrokh Bulsara in public. And when he did, he kept it brief. The distance between those two identities was, perhaps, the most private thing he ever kept. Freddie Mercury once said, "I won't be a rock star, I'll be a legend." He kept that promise. If this story surprised you, there's more where that came from. Subscribe, and we'll tell you the ones history forgot.